40 minutes. Okay, I imagine it won't take that long. Ceann Comhairle, our country's second Minister for Finance, believed that the purpose of government was to allow the greatest freedom for all, what he called the greatest possibility for the good of all. Yesterday, that message was at the heart of Budget 2019, presented by the current Minister for Finance, a budget he summarised in his conclusion as a responsible budget for a modern and caring Ireland that aims to be at the centre of a changing world. Budget 2019 is our attempt to achieve the greatest possibilities for the good of the country, for hard-working mums and dads, people starting out in work, those struggling to purchase a home, carers, the elderly and families. Our message is simple. First of all, this is a responsible budget, balancing the books and planning for the future in a prudent and sustainable way, because we believe in securing our prosperity and avoiding repeating the mistakes of the past. Second, we've put a little bit of money back into people's pockets through income tax and USC reductions, pension and welfare increases, pay increases, increases in the minimum wage, and reduced costs for childcare and healthcare. We believe in rewarding work, and we believe people should have the freedom to make their own decisions about how they spend their hard-earned money. Third, this is a budget that is Brexit-proof, because we believe in being prepared. And fourth, we've invested in public services and infrastructure. Budget 2019 ensures that we're in control of our destiny. It insulates us from uncertainty abroad and enables us to lay the foundation stone for building a better, stronger and more secure Ireland in the years ahead. Economic progress is not measured simply in economic statistics. It can be seen in the difference it makes to families, to the elderly, to hard-working parents and people struggling to make ends meet. So actions like reducing the cost of childcare and making more families eligible for subsidised childcare, reducing the cost of medicines for people with medical cards and those who don't, reducing the cost of visits to the doctor, can make a big difference in people's lives. Budget 2019 is taking place at a time when we're seeing the benefits of the progress that has been made. So we're determined to share those benefits as widely as possible. However, it's also come at a time when the external landscape is becoming more challenging. International developments in areas such as trade and tax have the potential to impact on our economic well-being, as do rising energy prices and the possibility of higher interest rates. We've also entered a critical time in the negotiations for the UK's departure from the EU, and everyone in this chamber knows that Brexit presents very significant challenges to our economy and society. This means we cannot deviate from the prudent path that has underpinned Ireland's recovery to date. In this period of uncertainty, we must avoid repeating the mistakes of the past and manage the public finances soundly. The main economic indicators show an economy continuing to perform strongly. In 2018, to date, we are experiencing another year of very strong growth. GDP growth is forecast at 7.5% for this year and 4.2% for next year. We all know, however, that in Ireland's case, GDP is not the best measure of real economic progress. So it is notable that other indicators such as consumer spending, domestic demand, tax take and labour market developments all confirm that Ireland's economy is growing strongly, but not as fast as GDP may suggest. Unemployment has fallen to 5.4% and total unemployment is now at 2.3 million, and almost a record high in fact. Over 360,000 new jobs have been created since 2012, but most of them created outside the Dublin area, and that is a notable achievement. However, this success has also contributed to growing pressures in our economy, especially in terms of housing, traffic and labour shortages. So the economy requires careful management and choices if we are to avoid the mistakes of the past. Every budget is about choices, and we can also see the choices that other political parties would have made courtesy to their alternative budgets, which they produced. The choices this government makes are found in responsibility. Yes, the economy is growing, but that doesn't mean that you take it for granted, nor does it mean that you take your eye off the ball and take growth and economic expansion as being for granted. Budget 2019 proposes an increase in current expenditure of 4%. That's in line with the level of growth in the economy. In the past, other governments lacked this level of prudence. Between 1998 and 2008, for example, the average increase in current expenditure alone was 11% a year. That's 11% more spending every year to cover the day-to-day expenses of the country, when the economy was not growing that fast. When we look back at that period now, we recall the utter devastation of that crash and the recession that it caused, and the harm caused to people across the country. And it is deeply dispiriting that so many parties in the House have not learned those lessons. The pre-budget submissions from Sinn Féin, the Greens, the Social Democrats, Labour and People Before Profit all show that the competition on the opposition benches is to spend, spend, spend and spend some more, and then borrow some more to pay for it all. Prudence is absent, and profligacy is the order of the day. This is just populism. Those same pre-budget submissions show they don't understand the importance of stable and consistent tax policy. As government demonstrated yesterday, there is a role for increasing taxation in certain circumstances, but those circumstances must be clear and should avoid multiple tax increases for no policy rationale other than raising revenue. We reverted the special 9% VAT rate for hotels and hospitality back to the 13.5% rate. That was a tax incentive introduced in 2011 at the height of the recession to create jobs in the service industry at a time when we had an unemployment crisis. The rate was due to have expired in 2013, but was continued until this year. Along with initiatives like the Wild Atlantic Way, the abolition of the airport tax, the special VAT rate has worked. However, it's no longer needed. Employment in the tourism and hospitality sector has risen to 235,000, and Irish tourism has enjoyed a record year with record revenues and record visitor numbers reaching their highest figures in this year just gone by. So it's now appropriate to end that incentive and use the additional money raised, 600 million in a full year, to fund investment where it's now needed most, in housing and healthcare and other public services. However, we're still going to invest in tourism long term because we recognise its value to the economy and in how we show ourselves to the world. And we're also conscious of the employment it provides in rural areas. So for this reason, Budget 2019 allocates €35 million to the Department of Transport, Tourism and Sport, specifically for the tourism sector. It includes €4.5 million for successful initiatives across the country, such as Ireland's Hidden Heartlands and the Wild Atlantic Way. And we're also going to invest nearly €10 million to further develop our greenways, because we've seen the success that they have had in Waterford, in Mayo and other places. When it comes to framing a budget, we believe increases in taxation should be thought through and their implications understood. We must avoid a scattergun approach with a large number of tax increases that would undermine economic confidence. But unfortunately, the appreciation of that is limited among these parties. The Social Democrats, for example, in their alternative budget, has over €1.5 billion in tax hikes in one year alone, 14 separate tax increases. Labour's alternative budget has €1.6 billion in tax hikes from 11 separate tax increases. Sinn Féin's alternative budget proposes an astonishing €2.9 billion in tax hikes from 20 different tax increases. The Green Party's alternative budget has an astounding €3.5 billion in tax hikes from 13 separate tax increases. And of course, not to be outdone by any of them, People Before Profit goes even further, proposing €16 billion in tax hikes. And that's all in just one budget, just one alternative budget from these parties. Billions in tax hikes, dozens of tax hikes, at a time when the economy is growing well. So imagine what they would do together if they had 5 budgets, and imagine what they would do in less favourable times. These policy initiatives would greatly undermine our economic performance and thereby limit our ability to meet the growing demands that we need for our public services to be properly funded. In marked contrast to that irresponsibility and populism, I must acknowledge the constructive and positive approach played by Fianna Fáil, the main opposition party in this third budget under the Constant Supply Agreement. As I travel the country and talk to different groups about the work of government and our plans for the future, I usually explain our approach to the economy under 6 basic principles. The first is sound management of the public finances and reducing our national debt, which still stands at over €40,000 per head. My wish is for once of all to break out of that cycle of boom and bust, of tax cuts one year followed by tax hikes the next, pay increases given only to be taken away because they were paid for with funny money. stop-start investment in roads, public transport, healthcare and housing, which in the long term is more expensive. So instead of boom and bust, this government wants Ireland to have what many other countries have in Northern Europe, which is sustained increases in living standards and sustained improvements in public services and public infrastructure year on year, consistently for a generation. Can Corley want that approach to be our new normal? So government has been determined to ensure that our strategy for Budget 2019 is based on steady increases in public expenditure, underpinned by stable and predictable tax revenue. Expectations have increased given the remarkable performance of our economy, and that's a good thing in the round. However, not all demands can or should be met, and certainly not all in 1 year. Budget 2019 will be the first budget with no deficit since 2007. It has taken us 12 years to get to this point, including 4 years of good economic growth. It's much more easily lost. And our prudent management of the economy to date has provided scope to increase expenditure next year in a sustainable way, with record allocations for departments like health, education and housing. We're also committed to maintaining a broad tax base that generates a sustainable revenue stream necessary to fund public services. We cannot and should not build permanent expenditure commitments on revenues that may not be sustainable. For this reason, we're setting aside some of the historically high levels of corporation tax for the purpose of creating a rainy day fund. Also, to be prudent, we're projecting that revenues from corporation profit tax next year will actually fall. The rainy day fund will be set up with 1.5 billion taken from Ireland's Strategic Investment Fund, and will be supplemented with an annual contribution of 500 million from the Exchequer starting next year. Our second principle is to continue to raise living standards in a sustainable way for all our citizens. And of course that can be done in 4 different ways: through lower income taxes, better pay, increased pensions and welfare payments, and reducing the cost of public services, such as childcare, GP visits, drug costs, prescription charges and insurance. At long last, we've fully reversed the cuts made by governments of the past in weekly payments to carers, people with disabilities, the blind, lone parents with young kids. We've restored the 100% Christmas bonus to all social welfare recipients this year. And from March, there'll be a €5 increase in the maximum weekly social welfare payments. Budget 2019 will also help families. We've increased the home care tax credit by €300 to €1,500, recognising the value of parents who stay in the home to look after young children. Government also recognises the importance of those first few years in the life of a child and what it means for their proud parents. So a new paid parental leave scheme will be introduced next year to provide 2 weeks extra leave to both parents in the child's first year. And that will be in addition to maternity leave and paternity leave. We believe in helping the most vulnerable, so we're increasing the qualified child payment for the under 12s by €2.20 a week and by €5.20 a week for those aged over 12. And we're also increasing the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance. These changes will have a positive impact on child poverty in 2019. A particular focus in our tax policy is reducing taxes for those who earn middle incomes. We've already taken the lowest paid out of the income tax net altogether. So the 30% lowest paid in Ireland don't pay any income tax anymore, and that's a good thing. However, people on very modest incomes pay the highest rate of income tax, and we don't believe that's fair. It's not the norm in other European countries, and it is damaging our competitiveness when it comes to attracting talent and good jobs to Ireland. So at Budget 2019, we're continuing to reduce the tax burden on middle income earners. For example, we've reduced the USE to 4.5% for the third rate, and we've increased the entry point to the higher rate of income tax for all earners by €750, increasing it to €35,300 in the case of a single taxpayer and €70,600 for a double income couple. We've also provided for public sector pay increases and an increase in the minimum wage. And we're also seeing increases in private sector pay as a result of our growing economy. The third principle is achieving full employment, improving employment rights and ensuring universal access to a pension plan for everyone, particularly those in the private sector, 2/3 of whom currently have no occupational pension to fall back on. The fourth is our ambitious programme for investment in infrastructure. Capital spending, that's spending on public infrastructure, will increase by 24% next year. We're going from being a country that is a relatively low spender on infrastructure to one that will be one of the highest spenders in the European Union in a few years' time. This year we'll spend an additional €1.4 billion on schools, universities, roads, public transport and other important infrastructure projects. We're a young country. We're a country with an expanding population, which is unlike other European countries, so we need to invest in infrastructure. We're also a country that's just become wealthy in the last couple of decades, so there are many areas where we need to catch up when it comes to public infrastructure. In part, this is being achieved through our ambitious Project Ireland 2040 plan, backed by a 10-year, €116 billion investment in housing, healthcare facilities, education, transport, broadband and climate change, which will bring economic opportunity to all parts of the country. Under Budget 2019, we're allocating an additional €53 million next year to fund the first round of projects under the new Rural Regeneration and Development Fund. And Minister Ring and I look forward to making that announcement quite soon. We're investing in rural Ireland and we're ensuring that plan developments are ambitious and sustainable. There's also been a €60 million increase in funding for the Department of Agriculture, allowing for a new beef scheme and also increased payments for areas of natural constraint. As part of Budget 2019, we're also investing €286 million in new transport infrastructure, including the completion of the runway overlay project at Knock Airport, cycling and walkway projects around the country, beginning work on the road at Sligo between Castlebaldwin and Collooney. A further €40 million will fund rehabilitation and repair of pavements of regional and local roads. Other actions in Budget 2019 reflect the decision to invest in our future. The Department of Education and Skills will have a budget of almost €11 billion next year, up €500 million on last year, and that reflects both our changing demographics and our belief in the importance of education as the great leveller and the giver of opportunity. Part of that investment will involve the creation of 1,300 new posts in our schools next year. We believe in helping children with special educational needs reach their potential, so next year we'll invest over €1.8 billion in special education. It means we'll bring the number of special needs assistants to a record high of 16,000, given the enormous need that there is. To prepare for the jobs of the future, we're providing over 15,000 new places in higher education, including 1,200 craft earn-as-you-learn places, 1,100 traineeships, and 5,000 places to promote lifelong and flexible learning. We'll also fund almost 3,500 additional undergraduate places as we invest in the building blocks of our prosperity, the imagination, the creativity, and the ingenuity of our young people, and all those in higher education. We recognise that one of the greatest challenges facing our country is in the area of housing and homelessness. The problem is that these actions take time to have an impact, given the lack of investment during the years of the economic crisis. We've heard and been affected by the stories of those who are at the sharp end of this crisis, especially children. Government firmly believes that every family should have a roof over their head and a place to call home. And we are all deeply concerned about the current levels of homelessness, as well as the shortage of supply in housing. So under Budget 2019, we've allocated a total of €2.3 billion for housing. That's a 25% increase. We're also providing an additional €93 million in local authority funding for housing next year. We're determined to maximise and speed up delivery and help people who need it the most. We've allocated €1.25 billion for the delivery of 10,000 new social homes in 2019, taking people off housing lists and into long-term tenancies. Budget 2019 also allocates an extra €121 million for HAP next year, so we can provide homes for almost 17,000 individuals and families for whom we don't yet have social housing built. While these kick in, we're making an immediate investment of €60 million in capital funding so we can assist those in emergency accommodation right now and provide additional family hubs, thus reducing reliance on hotels and B&Bs. We'll also provide an extra €30 million for homelessness services next year. €100 million is being dedicated to a Services Sites Fund to help local authorities make land available for subsidised affordable housing. This will be increased to €310 million over the next 3 years. In 2019 alone, we're increasing planned funding from €20 million to €89 million, and this will facilitate the delivery of around 6,000 subsidised affordable homes over the lifetime of the fund. As everyone in the House will know, climate change is one of the greatest long-term challenges facing our world. Budget 2019 provides for an investment of €103 million for improvements in grant and premium rates for planting forests, which acts as carbon sinks, and introduces a beef environmental efficiency pilot, or BEEP, to further improve the carbon efficiency of beef production. We're also allocating €70 million for TAMS and providing an additional €70 million for environment and waste management programmes. BRT is being increased on newly purchased diesel vehicles as both an environmental and health measure, and we're extending support for the transition to gas-powered buses and trucks as an environmental measure as well. Our policies in this area are informed by the work of the Climate Change Advisory Council, as well as the Oireachtas Committee on Climate Change, and influenced by the ESRI report. And the Minister of Finance is committed to setting out a long-term trajectory for carbon tax to 2030 on the basis of all-party agreement. For those who may criticise our commitment to the green economy, it's worth recording that Ireland is now a member of the Paris Collaborative on Green Budgeting, and the NTMA is due to issue Ireland's first green bond shortly. These actions are helping to integrate climate change considerations into our broader economic and social activities. The fifth principle is modernising our public services and ensuring better value for the taxpayer, for patients, for students and for families. Reform of healthcare is our biggest public service challenge, and so we've published our plan for the implementation of Sláintecare, the all-party mission statement that will bring about universal healthcare in Ireland over the course of the next decade. Budget 2019 provides an additional €700 million to health by way of a supplementary estimate, and will increase the health budget to €17 billion next year, representing an increase of 15% in health spending in just over 2 years. This is now the highest level of health spending in the history of the state. We're determined to get value for money and better outcomes for patients, and we need to make sure that money actually gets to the patient. By increasing the qualifying threshold by between €25 and €48 a week, as much as €2,000 a year for a family, we'll make an extra 100,000 GP visit cards available in 2019. This is less than the 500,000 recommended by Sláintecare, but it is a step in the right direction, and we have to take account of the capacity constraints in general practice. Budget 2019 also provides for a 25% reduction in prescription charges from €2 to €1.50 for all medical card holders over the age of 70, and a €10 reduction in the maximum amount that any family or household has to pay for their medicines each month. For the first time ever in the history of our state, we'll be investing €1 billion in mental health, a significant announcement, I think, on what is today World Mental Health Day. And again, it's crucial that this money actually gets to the patient. We've also raised the income thresholds for the affordable childcare scheme, because we want to make it easier for families to find and pay for childcare for their young kids. And we want to encourage more parents back into the workplace. In net terms, the basic income threshold is being raised to €26,000, and the maximum income threshold being raised to €60,000, and we're increasing the multiple child deduction to €4,300. So that means many more middle-income families will become eligible for the affordable childcare scheme. One of the greatest services the state can provide is maintaining law and order, so people are safe on their streets and in their homes. We have a roadmap for a radical reform of An Garda Síochána, with a report from the Commission on the Future of Policing, and we're investing to make its recommendations a reality. Next year, the budget of An Garda Síochána will be increased by €60 million, meaning we can recruit an additional 800 Gardaí, taking account of retirements that will increase the size of the force by 500 next year, which means by the end of next year, we'll have increased the size of the Garda force by over 1,000. We're also investing 220 in projects like the Forensic Science Lab, Garda ICT, Garda Vehicles and Limerick Prison. An additional €29 million is also being provided for our defence forces to replace equipment and improve infrastructure for our Army, Air Corps and Naval Service. The sixth and final principle relates to our role internationally. Earlier this year, we launched our ambitious plan to double the scope and impact of Ireland's global footprint over the next 7 years, entitled Global Ireland 2025. Under this initiative, we're opening 26 new diplomatic missions around the world, representing the most ambitious renewal and expansion of our international presence ever undertaken. Crucially, we've also reaffirmed our commitment to global justice, reducing inequality and promoting peace through a commitment to increasing ODA and continuing our strong track record as peacekeepers. Under Budget 2019, we're increasing our total overseas assistance budget by €110 million. And as a result, our overseas development assistance will be at its highest level in 10 years, at 0.31% of GNI, slowly working towards our commitment to reach 0.7% of GNI star by 2030. There are also budget increases for our global-facing agencies, like Enterprise Ireland, IDA, Board BIA and Tourism Ireland, among others. When I became leader of my party, and Taoiseach, I made a commitment that we would double spending on arts and culture and also on sport within 7 years. To double spending on these areas, you need an increase of about 10.5% per annum to get there. And I'm pleased to confirm that the increases in the budgets for arts, culture, heritage, the Gaeltacht and sport all exceeded this figure this year. So we're on track to meet that commitment. In fact, we're slightly ahead. As a Minister and as Taoiseach, I continue to take a special interest in the self-employed. As Minister for Social Protection, I had the privilege to be able to extend to the self-employed access to paternity benefit, treatment benefits and the invalidity pension. This budget provides for further actions to assist our self-employed citizens. It includes extending job seekers' benefit to the self-employed in 2019 and a further increase in the earned income tax credit. And will continue to increase the earned income tax credit until it's in line with PAYE workers. Given the close connections between the Irish and the UK economies, Brexit will inevitably have a negative impact on the Irish economy. Ireland's contingency planning is well advanced and continues to be a central government priority led by the Taoiseach. Recognising the importance of East-West trade, we've initiated actions to help prepare our ports and airports to take account of the changed trading relationship between with Britain post-Brexit. This complements actions already taken, including those announced in last year's budget. Over €45 million has been allocated for business, including a €300 million Brexit loan scheme for business and a €25 million Brexit response loan scheme for the agri-food sector. As part of Budget 2019, we're investing €300 million in a human capital initiative. We're also launching a future growth loan scheme for SMEs and the agriculture and food sector, with another €300 million behind it. And we're providing over €110 million for Brexit preparations across several departments. €60 million in current and capital Brexit-related supports are being provided to improve resilience in the farm sector and improve productivity in the food sector. As part of the same long-term thinking, we're investing in integrating our transport, energy and communication networks with continental Europe, providing new resources for tourism development and promotion, and helping Brexit-exposed firms to diversify and tap into international markets. In addition to Brexit, changes in the international tax landscape and increasing trade protectionism and rising geopolitical tensions all present challenges to our economy. So do rising fuel prices and the possibility of increased ECB interest rates. Automation, AI and other forms of technological innovation are rapidly developing and are expected to radically change many jobs, enterprises and entire industries. Domestically, the principal risk relates to the potential overheating of our economy as we approach full employment. The best way to mitigate these risks is to grow capacity, improve the resilience of the economy and increase productivity. Government has decided that we need a new economic initiative for Ireland to tackle the challenges facing us. The Future Jobs Initiative will drive our development as a resilient, innovative and globally connected economy, capable of coping with technological and other transformational changes ahead. It's aimed at enhancing productivity, labour market participation, innovation, skills and talent, and the low-carbon economy. And it will comprise a small number of impactful and deliverable actions in each of these areas. Minister Humphreys and I are leading a whole-of-government effort to develop this plan, and it will involve extensive consultation. To conclude, Ceann-Comhairle, sustainable economic growth is not a goal in itself. We prioritise it because this is how we ensure every person has the opportunity to succeed, and has an equal chance to share in our nation's prosperity, and that all parts of the country benefit from a growing economy. Budget 2019 is prudent and responsible, striking the right balance between improving living standards, overcoming our structural challenges, and securing our economy against the challenges we're likely to face in the future. And I commend it to the House. Thank you.
Thank you very much.